Welcome back, guys, to another episode. Today we're going to be talking about an awesome Greek word. Hit the intro. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Followers by Design. Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about the Greek word poema.
Poema.
Yes.
Say that 5 times fast.
Poema, 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 poema.
Wow.
That's more than 5 times. But
Yeah. Hey, you can say words, but you can't count. Yeah, so we got this word, poema.
Yes.
And the verse that it's found in, or one of the verses that you find it in, is Ephesians 2:10. And that is our podcast's key verse.
Yes.
That's why I have it on my shirt right now.
There's also an awesome shirt that shows the verse.
Oh, yeah, there is. Oh, it's on the back of this shirt.
Yes.
But I'm not going to get up. That's too much effort. So let's talk about what this word is, what it means, where you can find it in the Bible, and why it's important.
Yeah.
So what does this word mean? Tell me a little bit about the history of this word. What does it mean? What are the origins?
So this is a Greek word. So it comes from the Greek.
Ancient
It's
Greek.
ancient Greek.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I was about to say that. It's about ancient Greek. So many people in Greece won't know this word. Fun fact.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes from the word poem, and it's a little bit about how it's described in the Bible is that we're God's handiwork.
Well, that's where we get the word poem from.
Yes.
Yeah. So handiwork.
Yes.
Let's see. I've got my notes here. Handiwork. It could also mean like work of art or masterpiece. And what does this word describe?
So it is describing us and how we were created and essentially the purpose of why we were created.
Awesome. So I'm going to read Ephesians. Should we go 8 through 10?
8 through 10.
Yeah, let's do Ephesians 8 through 10. And then we'll dive into it. So Ephesians 2:10 is our key verse. And Ephesians 8 through 10 is just all of the context behind it, if you will. So here we go. Ephesians 2:8 through 10. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. And that word workmanship is poema.
Also, I want to backtrack just a little bit. Do you want to know the purpose of the letters of Ephesians?
Oh, like why Paul wrote to the church of Ephesus?
Yes.
Sure.
So the purpose is to disclose the purpose that God has for us.
Mm-hmm.
So if the chapter of Ephesians, what it goes over is the purpose that God has prepared for us. And it shows a little bit of it in Ephesians 2:8-10. That is what you read. And it goes over a little bit about why we're saved in the workmanship that we have.
Now, Ephesians is a whole book. There's 3 chapters of solid theology. Thank you, Paul. And then 3 chapters of practical application. So a great verse, for example, is Ephesians 6, verse 1, which is, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. This is good. That's practical application to what he was speaking about in the first 3 chapters. So I love Ephesians. Ephesians is a great book.
Honestly, I never paid that much attention to Ephesians, but all of a sudden, like, where we've been researching about this, the way we research about what we want our podcast to be about, I've grown a love for Ephesians.
Yeah, it's a great book. Highly recommend you read it.
Facts.
Like top 66 books, in my opinion.
Facts.
So what else we got on this word?
Honestly, it's interesting how in Ephesians it mentions workmanship. What's God's workmanship? What what does it mean for God's workmanship? So it's interesting how we are called his workmanship, and we are set, because it's interesting, because God prepared everything that we work for. God had already prepared it for us so that we do good works. But I want to dive a little bit deeper into this, and later down the line, we'll talk about the practicality of this word.
Mm-hmm.
But many people get confused when it comes to works. Because parts in the Bible it says the faith, like especially faith without act is a dead faith. But then it goes over and says that we're saved by His grace, but not by works.
Mm-hmm.
So few people get confused. I've had that question asked so many times, like, hey, like, what does this mean? Because in certain parts it says that we do need to have works, but in certain parts it says that faith, that we're saved by grace, not by works. So what's the balance on this?
Mm-hmm.
And in Ephesians it goes over a little bit about it, and it says that we're saved by His grace to be able to work.
Mm-hmm.
We're destined to be able to do good works. It doesn't mean that we're saved because of our good works. No, it's the other way. We are saved by His grace, destined to be God's workers, destined to work and do those good works that God has prepared for us after we've been saved.
Yeah, you can even look in the Garden of Eden. I've been reading through the creation story again, and even in the Garden of Eden, before the fall, before any sin entered the world, Adam and Eve were working.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it wasn't work like we think of it today. It was perfect work. There wasn't, they weren't sweating, and they weren't like over exhausting themselves. It was good. They were naming animals. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was the first command that God gave to man. Go name the animals. Go take care of the land. Go
have dominion.
Have dominion over it.
Mm-hmm.
God was assigning the work to us since the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting to see this work. And I want to talk a little bit about it later down the line. What does this work entail?
Mm-hmm.
What are we saved for?
Ooh, that's a good question. What are we saved for?
Mm-hmm.
Now, for now, we can talk about the fact that we are saved, and we do have a purpose.
Yes.
Everybody looks for purpose in their life. Everybody. What am I here for? Why am I here? Why am I the way that I am? Why do I have the personality that I have? Why do I have these characteristics? Maybe why do I struggle with things and some things come easy? Why is Danny so great at some things, but I'm awful at those things?
Yeah.
Well, it's because you were made for a purpose.
And I also want to, that brings me up into reading Ephesians, going a little bit back to the beginning of Ephesians, Ephesians 1:4. Even as He chose us in Him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and blameless before Him in love. So I feel like that gives a little bit more perspective of our salvation and why we were chosen by God to do His work.
Yeah. And even going further back in the Old Testament, in Psalms 139, 13 through 16, it says, For you formed my inward parts, you knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, in the days that you formed me, when as yet there was none of them. So before I was even a thought, God knew me.
Yes.
God knew exactly what I was going to do, and He knew my purpose in life. And that's quite comforting, is right off the bat, one, we've been created. Nobody here is an accident. Nobody here wasn't supposed to be alive.
Correct.
There isn't anybody that God is saying, oh, why are you here? Or I don't remember creating you. No, He created everybody. Everybody's got a purpose, and that's comforting to me.
It is. Honestly, so many times have we heard, "Oh no, you were in an accident. You were the accident child."
Mm-hmm.
No, there is. First of all, there is no coincidences for God. Everything has been said and will be said. Like everything is already preset in His plan.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody plays a part. There is nobody that can come to me and say, "No, I don't have a part in God's plan," because that's wrong.
Yeah.
And that is so beautiful to know that I have a purpose, I have a plan, and God has a use for me.
Yeah, it is. Pause for a second. I want to make sure that...
That should be recording. It's just,
I know it is, but I'm just going to turn off the...
Could also talk about when you said everybody, no one was a mistake. What about people who were like more clearly a mistake in a way, like born
Yeah.
out of marriage, like
Out of wedlock.
like completely like.
that's what I mean. Like,
but
Yeah, that's what... Yeah, I'll expand on your thought.
Yeah.
What's your password again?
DAPA 020901. My date of birth. Please cut that out. Let's cut that out.
I'll just crank the volume so the story. Like,
No, please cut that out.
he will. We'll make a short of it. It's fine.
No, no. Please cut that out. Just, there should be a way of turning it off.
Just thinking if we had like a little screen here, so that like if we were live or if I have ideas while you're talking, I can just type it in and you can see it.
Yes.
Say it again?
A little screen here, so I can type something in, you can see it, and then I can later also go with the chat if we're going live.
Yeah.
So like my idea just now, I could just say that, and you could choose to.
Or then you can also have a mic and just ask the
Go in my
questions.
Shut up about the sun and keep moving. All right.
You were able to fix it?
Yeah, I just turned the So it doesn't fall asleep. It just puts the screensaver on. So I just turn the screen. I set it to never turn on the screensaver after any amount of time.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So we were on Nobody's an Accident.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. That is very comforting to hear. And I can't say it enough. You are supposed to be here. You're alive for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And let's figure out that purpose. Let's find that out. So, we have one, everybody is created. Everyone is here for a reason. And everybody is created by God to be His handiwork.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean for us?
How do we put this in effect? So we have a Great Commission, and God explains that Great Commission
Mm-hmm.
that we are sent in the world not only to live in exile, but like throwback to our episode, but we're also sent to go and make disciples of the nations.
Mm-hmm.
Go and spread the gospel.
Yeah.
That is His work. That is what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
That is our calling and our
Mhm.
purpose.
Yeah. Now, the cool thing about the way that God created us, He didn't create a bunch of mindless robots, and He didn't create everybody the same. So with this word poemia, poema, thank you. Different language, sorry. We know that we've been created, and we know that we are individuals, right? So my strengths and weaknesses
Mhm.
are completely different than yours.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful because I love to do, like, for example, I love helping people move houses. Like, I love to drive big vehicles. I love to pack boxes into, like, I love to make a Tetris out of everything, right? And I love to efficiently get somebody moved into a house. That's not a very common thing, but that's something that I love to do. That's the way God made me. So anybody in our church or anybody that I know that needs help moving, I'm right there, right? Now, if everybody was like that, that'd be great. But then everybody would also have my flaws, and that's not great, right? So your strengths and your flaws are a part of who you are,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your flaws are a part of the fall, right? Sin entered the world and nobody is perfect,
Correct.
right? That's another cool thing is nobody's perfect. So you don't have to worry about being perfect because God already was. So you don't have to worry about it. And your strengths obviously push them, make your strengths even stronger. But your weaknesses are something that are going to help you grow,
Mm-hmm.
right? So far we have you are created and you are an individual. You have individual strengths and weaknesses and an individual purpose within the grand purpose of making disciples.
Yes. Yes. And that is our purpose and our identity. We're born in Christ to be able to go and do good works. So many people get confused on what is your identity, what is your purpose, and we kind of mistake our job with our purpose and our identity.
Mm.
And it's not supposed to be that way. It should be we're saved by God and we're God's children. That's our identity. Our purpose is to be able to go make disciples, go spread the gospel. Then it goes into our tactic on how are we going to do that. And that goes into maybe you're a pastor, maybe you're not, maybe you're a newscaster. That our tactic is different every
Mhm.
single time, because that's what we specialize on, what we do in a day-to-day life, what our work is. Because so many people get frustrated when what they thought their dream was changes for any
Mhm.
circumstance, and they think their purpose has gone away. They
Yeah.
don't have purpose anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the complicated part, because society has made it seem that what you do for work or what your dreams are, that those are your purpose in life.
Yeah, and that's your
it,
identity. Yeah.
yeah, and that's your identity, but it is not. Our identity is we're God's workmanship.
Mm-hmm.
We are God's workers. That's our purpose, is to go and do God's work.
Mm-hmm.
How we do it, it is different for everybody.
Yeah.
Because everybody was created with a different purpose. Not purpose, but everybody was created with a different intent in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
There is no one like you, because you have your own abilities and your own strengths. And the whole reason why this podcast works is because you're not the same. You're not like me.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to complement where I struggle, and I'm able to complement where you struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole reason why we're able to make this happen and work things out.
Yeah.
Because you have different abilities that I lack, and I have different abilities that you lack, and together we make something really good.
Yeah. Have you ever heard someone sharing their life story where, like, let's say it's a professional athlete and then they get just a career-ending injury
Yeah.
and they think, well, what am I going to do with the rest of my life?
Mm-hmm.
And then they figure out something about themselves that they didn't know because it was covered up by what they thought was their identity,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a football player is playing football, as they do, and he gets hurt, and then he thinks, well, my entire life has been in football, and now I can't play football. What am I doing now? Like, what is my life? As opposed to my identity is in Christ, and I use football to minister to people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That way, if football doesn't work out for you, you still have your identity and you still have your purpose.
Yes.
Just the way you go about it is differently.
And that's the difference between where the analogy in the Bible goes, like, build your house upon the rock, and God, Jesus, is that rock,
Mhm.
that foundation. But the person who builds their house in the sand, the house will fall down because it shifts. That's the difference between knowing that your identity and purpose is in God,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking that what you're doing, what your dreams are your identity or your purpose.
Yeah.
Once you have your life set in that foundation, nothing that happens will shift your purpose or your identity, because that's not meant to shift.
Yeah. And especially in the New Testament, you see this analogy of the church.
Mhm.
So all the Christians around the world being a part of one body, right? And that can be seen as a few different ways, like just a body of believers, like a group of people, which is true. But also you can think of everybody as having specific parts and specific roles in the church, right? As a human body. There are people that are the mouth, right? So those are preachers, those are teachers, those are people that have podcasts, right? And then there are different parts of the body, and those are different people that do different things.
Mhm.
And within like a local church, you have a pastor, you have elders, you have somebody that, or a group of people maybe that are on the worship band.
Mhm.
And depending on your church, you might have a tech crew, you might have a camera operator, you might have somebody that looks over the kids. You might have somebody that cleans up every day. You might have somebody that sets up.
Somebody that's greeting at the front door.
Mm-hmm. Like, not everybody can be a greeter.
No.
Not everybody can watch over kids. Not everybody can preach. Not everybody can run a soundboard, right? And one of those things are not greater than the other, right?
Mhm.
You can't have a pastor if there's nobody in the church,
Mhm.
right? And that is also very comforting for me, because I know that no matter what I do, as long as I'm doing it for the Lord, that's all that matters. I mean, you can be sweeping the church floor. You can be, doing a chore at home. But that's your purpose in that moment, right? Your entire life purpose is probably not to fold the laundry on a random Tuesday. That's not what your life has been building up to, right?
Mhm.
But that is a part of your full purpose.
Yes. And that's when it comes into effect of like glorifying God in everything that we do, because part of being his workmanship is showing his image on everything that we do, being able to shine that light on everything that we do, and doing everything to try and glorify him.
Mm-hmm. So far we have, you are created. You are an individual.
Mm-hmm.
You have a purpose. Did I say that yet?
No.
No. You have a purpose. You have a purpose. And it's just, life is about finding out how to fulfill that purpose. Because we know what that purpose is.
Yes.
Make disciples who make disciples who make disciples who make disciples who make disciples. Right? But how do you do that?
Yes.
So let's talk about a little bit about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
How have you been able to find your purpose or to find your tactic through your life?
So for me, I've always known that I'm a really extrovert person. I have really good people skills. Like I thrive into conversations, being able to like explain things, show things. I'm a really good teacher. So the way I found to be able to fulfill my purpose and my tactic is I'm a good leader. So serving always in leadership roles, like being in charge of youth group, being a leader at youth group, being a leader at our young adults group, just being able to guide people in their walk, just what we're doing right now. That's how I found that my tactics work better when I'm trying to help other people find their way, help
Mhm.
other people know their purpose and be able to find the best way of portraying that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
So for me, I grew up in public school. So I was very used to being that outsider, being somebody that, like, I'm a Christian and
Mhm.
most other people aren't. what I struggled with a little bit was kind of being a bit more real, you know, because I think people saw me as a goody two shoes, which was pretty true to an extent. But I didn't open up too much about it. But anyway, but my tactic was always just letting my life show the love of God, and then being ready to answer questions or to talk about my faith with whoever asks. And, you know, people did ask, often, and then
Yeah.
that was a way that I could share. So I knew, for example, I know I'm built for ministry,
Yeah.
but I've never wanted to be a pastor because a pastor works in a church, and I don't want to work in a church. I want to work somewhere where there are a lot of non-Christians, because I am very comfortable in a lot of different situations with a lot of different people. And for example, I used to work at Wegmans. Shout out to Danny Wegman. And I loved working there because I knew that I could be a light at, I could be a light anywhere I worked. And Wegmans was just where I happened to work. And I could start up conversations. Or I could just be a good worker and be a good example of Christ. Excuse me. And that would draw people to God. So that's how I've done. That's kind of how I've found my tactic, is knowing that no matter where I am, I can let that light shine.
Yeah. Now, we both have spoken a little bit of how we found our tactic, what our tactic is.
Mm-hmm.
What is some advice that you can give our viewers on like how to find their tactic?
So remember how we were we've got our whole series on spiritual disciplines,
Yes.
and that kind of ties into your own gifts, right? And we've talked a little bit about ours. Like, I'm very musical. You have very good personable skills.
I'm also really creative.
Yes, you are. And we both are very good at finding efficient ways to run things and, that type thing. So when you are living out your life for Christ, you found a successful tactic when it doesn't drain you. And I'm going to give you an example. There are, plenty of times where I might be directing or serving directly in church and I am exhausted. Or maybe I'm running a summer camp and I am exhausted. But it's a good tired, right? I feel filled. I feel like I have done something, right? We've all been somewhere or in a situation where you feel drained and you don't feel good about it, right? Maybe you feel like you've wasted your time, or you feel like you weren't valued. But when you have found a successful tactic, you feel fulfilled.
Yes.
And that's not really advice on how to feel fulfilled. Saying feel fulfilled is not a good tactic. But that is a really good, what's not notion, but a really good way to know that you are
in the right spot.
in the right spot. Yeah. It's just figuring out what that spot is.
Sometimes all it takes is just taking a deeper look in who you are and just analyzing, what are my passions?
Yeah.
What am I good at? Like, am I good at just explaining things? Am I good at just taking things into action? Am I good at like leading? Kind
Good
of
with
like taking an
kids.
aptitude test.
Yeah,
Kinda
yeah.
like knowing what things you're good at. And I feel like that opens a little bit more of like, what is my tactic? How can I fulfill my tactic of making disciples by knowing what I'm good at?
Yeah. Now, another example is I love music.
Mm-hmm.
And being on the worship team is something I plan on doing until the day I die. I don't know. It's like I love it so much and I want to be a part of it. And that is such an easy, simple, right off the top of my head. That's obvious. That's what I'm doing. Some things that aren't as obvious that I kind of had to figure out is I'm a really good leader.
Yeah.
So, like, I used to lead our young adult group,
Mm-hmm.
and we're both youth leaders.
Yeah.
Leading worship is another thing. And I found that that's a good tactic for me.
Yeah, we keep finding ourselves on leadership positions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But another thing I will add is it should come naturally, but sometimes it's not that easy, and
Mhm.
you've got to really push through some hurdles.
Yes.
Like an example could be there are some people who are just not good with working with kids.
Mm-hmm.
So to you, I say, don't work with kids, right? There are some people that just can't figure out technology to save their life. Don't work on the tech team. You know, like that's kind of an obvious thing. Now, for some people, working with kids seems like a chore, so they never do it. But you never know.
Mm-hmm.
You might try working in student ministries for a little bit and then realize that you love it. Or
Yeah.
you might realize that there's somebody at your work that could really use a friend. And then all of a sudden they start asking you about Christianity because they see the way you live.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that takes a step of faith, and that takes action. So, once again, we have you are created.
Yes.
We have you are an individual. You're made individually.
Yeah.
You have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing I want to touch on is that you are an example of God.
Yes.
And when he created you in his image. He created you to be an example to everybody else of who God is. And that's really crazy to think about it.
Yes.
We're called ambassadors of Christ. If you, like, I used to work at Wegmans, so I was kind of an ambassador of Wegmans whenever I put on that polo. Whenever I have this polo on, I am representing the company, and I am representing everything that it stands for.
Yeah.
Right? And then when I took off the polo, I wasn't, right? The difference is here, if you're a Christian, it's 24/7. It's
Mm-hmm.
all the time. So that also can help you figure out your tactic, because you can think of, what would Jesus do? That's a simplified version of it,
Yeah.
right? But that's something.
Yeah. It is interesting to see that even though we're not perfect, we're still modeled in his image.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that we do has to reflect his workmanship.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we do has to reflect him. And
Yep.
that's what we've been saved and chosen to be able to show that love through what we do, because that's who we are. We are a reflection of God. So we should be reflecting him. We should be representing him on everything that we do.
And you can work on that through spiritual disciplines. You can
Mhm.
work on that through getting an accountability partner.
Yeah.
Or multiple. You can work on that by involving yourself in a community of Christians. And then even further, going out into the world. Right? Because if you're only hanging out with Christians all the time, you're not fulfilling your purpose.
Correct. There's no way of fulfilling your purpose with people who are already on track of fulfilling theirs.
Mhm.
Like there is no way of showing me, like there's no way of me teaching somebody how to play like a professional football player. There's no way of me teaching him what to do because he already knows it.
Yeah.
So go
Mhm.
teach somebody that doesn't know.
Yeah. Yeah. There's plenty to be said about, obviously making disciples who make disciples can include a current Christian that maybe needs to be a bit more mature.
Mm-hmm.
But then obviously that it entails being fishers of men and going out and showing the love of God and helping bring people into his community, into his kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
That's our purpose.
Yes,
That's your purpose.
it is. Honestly, I feel like that's a great way of wrapping everything up.
Yeah.
Just, we've talked about who we are.
Mm-hmm.
We are his workmanship. We talked about what's our purpose in God, what's our identity,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked a little bit about the applicability of all this, what our tactic is, how we fulfill our purpose and why we were created.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also managed to go a little bit deeper into where to start, what to do, and what to look for.
So remember these 4 things. You are created by God. You were created individually. You were created with a purpose. And you are an ambassador of God. You're an ambassador of Christ and an ambassador of his kingdom. So live a life worthy of your calling. We'll see you in the next episode.
Peace.